Are you the one? There are almost 8 billion people in the world, but are you the one that needs hope? In this very moment, there are 332 million people in the US, but are you the one that feels alone? Good news is, you're not alone. While 80,000 thoughts will bombard you today and can feel chaotic, just one thought can potentially bring you peace and free you. Join us today, together with our guests, as we sift through the challenges, pains, questions, and victories in life. In sharing our stories, are you the one that will be inspired to take the next step toward fully living the purposeful and abundant life God created for you? Welcome to Are You the One?
Hey everybody, welcome to Are You the One? We are here on a lovely, lovely Phoenix day, and I have a special guest with me who I haven't seen for many years. Last time I saw her, she was maybe, I don't know, early 20s, maybe giving away. So I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. But it was a few years ago, and I am so excited for you to hear her story. You know, one of the interesting things in my journey with the Lord and in church for most of my life has been that I'd never heard a testimony. I'd never heard a testimony until I went to my first Celebrate Recovery meeting in California. And I heard a testimony and it changed my life. I mean, I saw myself in that testimony. And one of the incredible things is that it brings us hope. It also shows us that we're not alone, that what I'm going through, like others have been down this path, like even a step or two before me. And so I know that I can get through this. So you're going to hear an amazing testimony that is about God's goodness, and it's about redeeming what the enemy has stolen in so many ways in generations, and how, like, as bad as things can look, one moment with God and persisting in that journey of recovery can change your entire life, and it will look so different. So I'm going to welcome Jamie to our show today, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Jamie, and I'm just like pushing the ball over to you and saying, I know. Why don't you start with just introducing yourself, and then we'll jump in from there.
Okay. Thank you so much for asking me to come. I've never done a podcast or spoke in this type of setting. My name is Jamie, and I'm 38 years old. I had to think about that. I keep forgetting. 38 or 39? 38. 38, I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. I'm married. This year will have been our 10th year married. My oldest son is 20, my middle son is 11, and my youngest daughter is 9. My husband and I both met in recovery, I would say a little over 13 years ago. I was living in a sober living. This particular one I was living at was the 3rd time I had lived there. I had nothing. My husband did not live there. He had lived there prior to me, but we met there. Mm-hmm. My recovery journey, I like to say, really started in September of 2010. Although I was exposed to recovery, the first time I was in treatment, I was 17 years old. So I wasn't a stranger to 12-step recovery. My dad got sober when I was 10. So I knew because he took me to meetings with him as a kid.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he got sober here in Phoenix and then moved to Southern California of like maybe 2 months after he got sober. And so he took me on the visits that we were there for, summers or whatever. He didn't have a babysitter, so I was really into it and I liked going with him.
How old were you at that time?
10. I was
Okay.
10. It was 1995. So I knew about the other side of it. I knew there was a different way. I didn't understand the disease of alcoholism, obviously. I was a little kid. I knew that my family was plagued with it, with problems. I knew that. And so I was pretty...
At 10 years old, you were very well aware of that.
I figured it out by the time I was in fourth grade. I was 9 years old, and I had it figured pretty well, in my 9-year-old brain. Because I had spent lots of time at that point thinking about it and was consumed by it and anxiety. And I knew that my life was different than my peers, and I knew I felt different. At least I internalized that. So I always say that I'm grateful that my dad was the first person that showed me people that were once, I want to say, broken, even though at that time in my life I didn't know broken. But
Right.
let's just say in my adult brain, I know they were broken and that they weren't anymore, and that they were happy, and it seemed like a really, fun thing. I always liked listening to what my dad had to say, even though I was a kid. I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but it was something I felt. And so I wound up in my first treatment center, not because I wanted to go. I was homeless for a while. I had moved and left home at 15 willingly, but I started being moved around at 12 to different family members. My mom was a single mom, and she did not know what to do with me, and I was, to put it mildly, a handful.
Do you remember? I'm sorry for interrupting. Do you remember, like, your first drink?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, it was pretty, like, drink wise. Gosh, it's like to say this and I feel like I have to go into a whole story. So here's the thing. My mom was, my parents divorced when I was 2. My dad is alcoholic. My mom started using drugs probably around the year I was born. At least that's what has been told to me. So my mom got a boyfriend when I was 3, and he lived in the west side of Phoenix, and so we were over there a lot. And then I think I was in, like, let's just say kindergarten. And I went to school over there, and my sister, who's 4 years older than me, she met a friend at the school, and they lived not far from where my mom was with her boyfriend all the time. So we were at this family's house. I would say an abnormal length of time. And this family, they were good people. They were probably not the healthiest. And there was a lot of kids. There was very little money. And here they took my sister and I in for, like, I would say days to a week at a time. And going back to your question, so there were ranges of teenagers down to 4 years old in this house. And then I was 6 and my sister was 10. And then her friend was 10. And then she had a brother that was, I want to say, if I was 6, he was 9. And then her oldest sibling at that time would have been 13. And the parents, it was kind of a free-for-all. And I remember the teenage brother was drinking, and it was always like stuff going on. And they gave me alcohol, and I was like 6. And I remember getting very sick, and that was, I don't know why somebody would give a 6-year-old alcohol. I remember, though, really wanting it and wanting to, like, hang out with them, because that was also a thing too, is my sister assumed so much responsibility for me that I didn't view myself as being 6. I viewed myself like I was 10, like her. And so even though they were older than me, and in some ways maybe they weren't doing anything that crazy for their age, but because of my age, it really was crazy. And I remember vomiting and somebody putting me in the bathtub and like rinsing me off. And I remember the mom finding that out and being really upset, and that somebody did that, gave me alcohol. But the first time though, that I ever recall, like, I would say that I used substances. So I was in 6th grade. So I was 11. I always say I started 6th grade in a dress and had bangs. And I think previously that summer, I might have even still been playing with Barbies. And my whole world just changed in a very short time. Like I said, I knew that my mom used drugs. I knew that. And I had just had DARE program in school in 5th grade.
Not everybody knows what the DARE program is.
So the DARE program, if you were born in the 80s and lived in the 90s, you had DARE. And the police officer, and God bless him, Officer Manny Chavez, who also searched for me avidly when I would run away later on in life. He was my DARE officer, and he came in with this little briefcase, and they give this whole spiel on drugs and how they're dangerous. And they would play those videos where like the 2 eggs and the cracking of with the pan, and that's what your brain looks like on drugs. Yes. And they had this briefcase and it had all these illicit drugs in it. And I remember, I was terrified. Like I knew enough what was going on, and I knew like I wanted my mom to be different and normal. And I could relate, or not relate, but I could connect with why she was abnormal. And I always had a healthy fear. However, that was 5th grade, and then 6th grade, because I was also like wildly obsessed with knowing everything my mom was up to, because I always felt lied to. And so I was obsessed with wanting to know the truth. So I was a snoop, and I would go in and find everything and snoop through my mom's stuff. So I found drugs in my house quite frequently. And this one day in 6th grade, I found a couple, it was like probably $20 worth of Coke. And I took it and I put it in a line because I seen it a ton in movies. And I snorted it. And then I went to school and told everybody, which nobody when you're 11 thinks that's really cool. And they're like, yeah, that's weird. What's wrong with you? And I didn't know at that time that I can't say that I did that because I was a drug addict. I didn't know that. I was very confused about myself, where I fit. I felt very different than people. I did not feel like I was a good kid. I didn't feel like I was a part of. I had a lot of insecurities and a lot of anxieties. And I think in some way, maybe I thought people would think that was somehow cool. And I ended up starting to hang out with older kids. And that drug experience was quickly followed by me smoking weed and then dropping acid. And this was all in like 6th, 7th grade. And it just kind of went from there. And I feel like there's a lot of context in that. Like, it sounds weird, but and maybe when we get into more of the family system stuff, I could better expound on what I've learned now in the work that I've done on, like, how does an 11-year-old, why would an 11-year-old even think to do something like that? I didn't know at that time. I know now, right. But that's because I've done a lot of work in all of these years that I've been in recovery that I can see clearly, and also from raising my own children, because now I'm like, geez, like there's, well, not that all kids that are, have difficulty in their home are going to use drugs. I hope that's not the message that I'm saying, because I don't think that that's everybody's experience. It just happens to be mine. My older sister did not do that. So we lived in the same house, shared a room, same parents, same, in some ways, I think she had it worse. She didn't do that.
Right.
So.
Right. And you have as much time as you want to talk about family systems. We can just stay right here on that, because maybe that's,
So I want to be like really clear. I always say this. So when I'm asked to share in recovery meetings, I make clear very like a distinction that, and I kind of just touched on it. I had traumas and things in growing up. I wouldn't say I've met tons of people that have had it a lot worse. I've met people that hear my life and go, geez, that's insane. Mm-hmm. So it's all relative to the individual. Yes. Somebody might experience a trauma that I'm like, wow, that really wasn't that, like really that was it, but everybody reacts differently. So it's totally a personal thing. I want to say that I think like I've dissected this a lot. I've been in therapy the last like 3 years pretty faithfully, and I have started to do some work in a fellowship called Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so like my mom, she had that boyfriend. So, and there was a domestic violence and there was a lot of insanity. There wasn't a lot of stability. And I don't think children know, like, my mom doesn't care about me but it's a feeling. And I know that my mom cared about me. I know that today. I know that my mom was doing the best that she could with where she was at in her life. It doesn't make it right, but I've made peace with that. And it's not why I'm alcoholic. It's not why why I react to substances the way that I do. However, I think that because of who I am as a person and maybe my DNA or whatever, my trauma response maybe led me on a path towards seeking things outside of myself to solve a problem that I didn't even know existed, but I just knew that I felt a certain kind of way. And when I started using drugs, I found that I felt like I could successfully do life in a way that I'd never felt before. So I didn't have a lot of stability. I was shuffled around a lot. I was late to school every day for years of my elementary school. So every day I'd walk in, and sometimes I had the same clothes on, and sometimes my hair wasn't combed, and sometimes, well, not sometimes, like most of the time, I didn't get a breakfast in the morning. I lived off the school lunch program. So like I was embarrassed. I didn't do homework. I was behind. Now, I think that was the first time I felt shame. The teachers would look at me and say, you can't be late anymore. Why are you late? Why are you, and I don't know why I'm late, because I'm 8 and 9. I'm not driving myself to school here. Right. So all of that went on for years. And then I missed, like, I had a truancy officer by the time I was in 5th grade. 5th grade, I didn't want to go to school anymore. I decided, like, I did not want to do this. This sucked. And I fought my mom all the time and didn't want to go. And she was like, whatever, and didn't make me go. And it wasn't what she wanted for me. Right. My older sister could have probably stayed home too, and she chose to go. So I wanted to stay home and do nothing and sleep and watch cartoons. And eventually I was smoking cigarettes and whatever. Like, but all of those things, I say that to say that they all fed into this feeling of like not being connected to my peers. And I think now I know this as raising my own children. I didn't have a positive sense of who I was or myself. So I looked constantly to, that's why like my peers' acceptance was such a big deal. That's why, the school grades and all of these things that like those things don't define children. And children raised in stable, functional homes don't look so much in the ways that I was looking for those things to define them. And so if I failed at one of those things, which I constantly internalized that I did, I felt like I wasn't worthy and I was filled with shame. And so naturally, the progression of my life choices, when I started using drugs, and then I found the kids at school that smoked pot, and then I found, in seventh grade, the older siblings of these friends of mine that were going to raves and selling ecstasy and doing acid. I was like, I want to hang out with these people. I want to be cool at all costs. And I, wore the crop tops and the Jinko jeans. And like, I was just, started sixth grade in a dress and ended in Jinkos and thrift store clothes. And my whole like persona and wardrobe.
It was being accepted by them.
Being accepted. Was being cool and being accepted. And I hated at this point, I started to hate my mom. I started to hate my sister because she is not cool and she's always telling on me and she's always trying to tell me what to do. And I was at 12 years old, I was counting down the days till I was 18 and I could get out. And so in hindsight, it's like, well, of course, drugs and alcohol entered into that. Like, it seems like it was like the next indicated thing in my life. And in many ways, I'm thankful for them. I can say that. I'm thankful today that I believe because of my drug addiction, it brought me to such darkness at such a young age, and for a lot of years that I was forced to have to face myself. And I never was a person like my story doesn't involve like me successfully being able to shoot heroin and go to college. Like I barely made it out of the 8th grade. I did not want to do life. I did not know how people did it. I felt like I looked outside of myself and looked at these people and I would wonder, how do they get up in the morning? How are they happy? It was like really baffling. And so like I, did as much drugs as often as a person can do them when they're 12 and 13 years old. And believe it or not, it's kind of scary, like how accessible. And I think even today, it's probably even more accessible because when I was 12, there was no cell phones. We had pagers. But there was no no going to like the QT and hitting homeless people up for fentanyl. Like it's super easy. You throw a rock and you like, it wasn't like that. And you actually like got arrested for doing drugs. You couldn't like just sit at the bus stop and smoke fentanyl and not go to jail for it. Like you would get in trouble. So there was like a lot of, things. Now it doesn't mean it like hindered me. Where there's a will, there's a way
when it comes to what you really want.
For sure. So, and then Trish, it just gets a little bit crazy.
Your life from that point of like 6th grade then basically was one like downward spiral. Right?
Yeah.
Until
25.
But 17 is when you like began. Began your first time in recovery, right?
So I went to that treatment center, but that was like because I was it was that or going to prison.
I was going to say, was that?
Yeah.
Usually it's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, it was that or like go to prison, and I was like, okay, I'll go to treatment, and I don't recall like what was said there.
Right.
I remember because I was 17 and I was sitting in these groups with like adults that were 10 and 20 years older than me. And the thing is at that time at 17 years old, like I could identify with the way that they did drugs. Like I started being an IV drug user at 17 years old. I identified, but they would look at me and they'd say things like, I've spilled more drugs on the floor than you've ever done. And so instantly I'm like, I don't belong here. Maybe I'm not really like them. And I didn't really, in parts of me at that time felt like I could control it. It was a choice. I just hadn't found anything yet in this life that made me want to stop. And so even though being homeless, separated from my family, being estranged, not going to school, not doing the normal things was a consequence. I didn't view it like that.
Right.
I just was thinking, like, in my naive 17-year-old brain that when I was ready to not do it, like, it would just happen.
Right.
And I didn't know when. So I did, like, there was part of me that heard what I wanted to hear in that treatment center, which was, you're young, you don't belong here. These people are old, right. And they're, different than you.
Right. Well, and the whole world at that point is different
Totally.
from you. And what I love is that, like, you who are watching and listening to this, like, you can't imagine this woman sitting here across from me here, who is like this really accomplished woman, is the same that we're talking about. And so we are going to do the second part of this story coming up. But to know, like, if you had 1 minute to talk to somebody about either them at this stage, in other words, like a parent looking at a child who was you, right?
Oh, okay.
You have 1 minute to encourage the
parent. Oh my goodness. Okay, parents. So even though I feel like maybe I hope I did not just sit there and make this about my mom, because it's not. But because my own first son has addiction issues and is actually sober 8 months. So I went through all of the blaming myself, and I do assume a certain level of responsibility because I didn't get sober or start to change my life until he 25. Was almost 7 years old. There is a level of personal responsibility that I carry, except for because of my recovery. So my encouragement would be that you find your own recovery process, whatever that looks like for you, to be able to come to acceptance of your child and forgiveness of yourself, so that you can constructively help your child and know how to do it the right way, because parental guilt is a big thing.
Oh, yes.
And we will, without knowing it, repeat the same cycle and enable. And so I am very grateful for my own being connected to my own experience, and also for my therapy and Al-Anon and all of the other programs that I've done that has helped me to own what's mine to own, and also helped me to not enable, and to forgive myself. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yes,
because I'm not the reason my son struggles. And today, like, we've got a pretty awesome relationship.
That's a great place of hope that we're going to leave you with, in that the rest of the story we're going to hear coming up next week. But thank you, Jamie, for just like bringing us to that place. And I'm going to promote one specific program right now for parents, and it's called PALS, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones. They're all over the country, and I'm going to encourage in addition to other 12-step programs, but PALS for you parents who are struggling. I encourage you on that too. So are you the one, like today, that needed to hear that, needed to have a message of hope that journey, it doesn't end where we're leaving it. It ends where God's bringing it, which is next time. So thank you for being with us on Are You the One?
Thank you for listening to Are You the One today. We are grateful that you chose to get into the messiness of life with us. We pray that you have been encouraged and blessed and are ready to perhaps take that next step. Remember, you are not alone. Please visit our website, areyoutheoneshow.com, for resources and reinforcements to help you navigate your way to the heart of God and His great plans for your life. Join us again next week as together we dive into the deep end of life's issues on Are You the One?